local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under a heat warning in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, feeling around 30, 23 degrees in Ottawa and 22 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. 2 people died in an early morning collision on the 417 near Panmure Road. OPP say a pickup truck with a utility trailer attached was stopped in the live lane. 2 people were outside the vehicle when it was struck by a transport truck. The 2 people outside the vehicle pronounced dead at the scene. The eastbound lanes of the 417 closed for the investigation around 1 o'clock this morning. They remain closed this hour. OPP have not said how long the closure will be in effect. Police say family members of the 2 killed have not all been notified, so their identities are not being released right now. City News Time 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Hot, humid conditions again today. Slight chance of showers, isolated storms. A high 30 will feel like 38. Scattered thunderstorms possible tonight, the low 20. And tomorrow, slight chance of showers. Otherwise, mainly sunny. 32, feeling like 39. For today, the high 30.
And right now, feeling like 30, it's 23 degrees in Ottawa, 22 in Smiths Falls. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson plans to meet with the other G7 leaders tomorrow for an urgent discussion on the situation in Afghanistan. It's not clear if Justin Trudeau will take part in the virtual meeting that Johnson says is necessary to ensure safe evacuations and prevent a humanitarian crisis. Johnson wants the United States to extend its evacuation effort beyond the August 31st deadline, saying without the Americans, other countries will have no choice and will have to stop their own operation. Yesterday, the Canadian Immigration Minister, Marco Mendicino, said Canadian personnel now have full operational discretion to take whatever actions are necessary to get as many people into the airport in Kabul and on Canadian evacuation flights as quickly as possible. City News Time 9:02. One of the province's health crisis advisors has resigned this morning. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
Just getting word that epidemiologist Dr. David Fissman is deciding to step down from the province's science advisory table. His letter of resignation that he posted on Twitter states that he finds himself increasingly uncomfortable with the degree to which political considerations appear to be driving the outputs from that table. He does, however, go on to say that it was a pleasure to serve and commends the table for being a world leader in bringing an equity lens to its recommendations. Now, Dr. Fissman has been a long vocal critic of a number of public health decisions and leaders during the pandemic. I'm Kevin Meisner.
City News Time 9:03. A number of groups have joined several councillors now asking for an emergency transit commission meeting. Following 2 issues involving the axles on the LRT and a double-decker that steered off Carleton into a ditch, the Horizon Ottawa, Transit Riders, and Free Transit Ottawa all asking for this emergency meeting. Now, Mayor Jim Watson and the Transit Chair, Alan Hubley, both say they're satisfied with updates to the city so far and the general public on the issue. They're having their questions answered. Kirsten Pullis from Free Transit Ottawa says transit riders are afraid a train could malfunction. Now, the Transit Commission is scheduled to meet on September 15th. Councillor Catherine McKinney says if no meeting is called before that date, you can bring your transit concerns to City Hall on Wednesday morning for a question and answer at 11 o'clock at Marion Dewar Plaza. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And don't look now. There's less than a month to go in the federal election campaign. Less than a month. And it's actually a race. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. I hope you had a great weekend. Hope you managed to stay cool, my friends. No break in the humidity in sight, and the weather is fitting because the Trudeau Liberals must be feeling the heat. Surely to goodness, they called this election thinking their big lead would hold up. Instead, they've seen it more or less evaporate in a little more than a week. And some of the results from some of the pollsters, well, I have to say they're very surprising. I think most shocking of all has to be the nightly tracking polling from Ecos, Frank Graves' firm. And typically, this is my own opinion, I find this firm's polling, it usually kind of tilts the Liberal way. Just my own opinion. The latest nightly tracking poll from Ecos was for yesterday, and it has it this way. The Conservatives in the lead. Yeah, you heard that right. The Conservatives in the lead. Teeny tiny, itsy bitsy teeny weeny, little lead. You could call it a tie, but the Conservatives are in the lead. Conservatives, 32.8. Liberals, 32.4. NDP, 16.6. So at best, if you're in the Liberal war room this morning, the best thing you can say is, hey, at least it's a tie. And poor old Mr. Singh of the NDP, all of that TikTok loving, all of those views, all of those followers and likes, and his party is behind by, at least 15 points, according to this pollster. Then, and again, this is according to one polling firm, Ecos. But Ecos suggests that, the story is totally shifted in Ontario, which I did not see happening. But Ecos has the Conservatives in the lead in Ontario. The Conservatives in the lead in Ontario. 38 for the Conservatives, 34 for the Liberals, and 15 for the NDP. And also, this polling data has the Conservatives in the lead in BC by 5 points. Now, one aspect of this nightly tracking from Ecos that I would be worried about if I was in the Conservative war room is that the Liberals still have the lead among older voters. Liberals are hanging on to their lead with that over 50 crowd. And the lead only gets bigger the older the voter. With 65 plus voters, for example, the lead is 9 points for the Liberals. That would worry me if I was in the Conservative campaign. Because older people are more likely to vote. Okay? The older people are the most likely to vote. Very interesting data, especially the numbers from Ontario. Now, taking a look at some of the other polling this morning. Mainstreet Research is doing the polling for iPolitics, and it says the national race is statistically a tie, quote, statistically a tie. Mainstreet has it like this. Liberals in the lead, but it's a tiny lead, itsy bitsy teeny weeny. 32.4 for the Liberals, 31.7 for the Conservatives, NDP 18.2. Mainstreet Research has the People's Party, by the way, polling at 6.6%. I bring that up for two reasons. First, you can bet the Conservative Party of Canada would love to have that 6.6%. No kidding. And the People's Party, Maxime Bernier, the leader, Mad Max, will not be allowed to participate in the leaders' debate. The debate commission made that decision on the weekend. Said the People's Party can't be in the debate because it wasn't polling at 4%. Mainstreet this morning has them at 6.6%. Mainstreet also has this thing that it releases every day called the Election Barometer, and it didn't move much for the first few days, but it's moving now. It says there's now a 65% chance of a Liberal minority, that is the most likely outcome, a Liberal minority, which would lead, I think, a lot of us to think, well, what are we doing this for? To end up right where we were. 65% chance Liberal minority, 35% chance Conservative minority. I mean, let's face it here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little more than a week into the campaign. The Liberals had to think. I mean, Mr. Trudeau had to think, we have the winning condition. We're calling the election. You would have to think, whatever it is, 8-9 days into it, we'd be running away with it by now. And it's anything but. They haven't explained why we're having the election to any credible degree. Afghanistan is a total wild card. It is a humanitarian catastrophe. It caught this government very clearly. Well, I guess in fairness, if you want to be fair about it, all the Western liberal democracies, truth be told, caught them all flat-footed. The speed of the Taliban victory. And trying to get out of Kabul, it's all over the news. And it's been all over everyone's social media feed ever since. All of the problems that the Canadian government is having trying to get the Afghans who helped our men and women in Afghanistan, help get them out of that terrible, terrible place. But instead of, say, concentrating on that with 100% of the government's effort, Mr. Trudeau and his cabinet ministers, they're out trolling for votes because they called the election. And there have been other things that, well, to be kind, haven't broken their way either. The vaccine mandate issue as a wedge issue quickly faded away. The abortion issue had no effect. O'Toole very skillfully, I must say, got out in front of that issue, spoke with clarity about where he stands on it. I think after a day or two, there was nothing left other than the lingering stench of desperation over the Liberals. And now, this is the best one yet. And now, the Liberal campaign wakes up this morning, support faltering, and their latest campaign attack against Aaron O'Toole, comments he made about health care, has been labeled what? Fake news. Fake news. By Twitter. The people behind the curtain at Twitter slapped a warning label on a tweet from Chrystia Freeland, who I think even conservatives thought, at least she seems to know what's going on. She's the adult in the room. Instead, one of her tweets is now labeled in the Twitter sphere manipulated media. Manipulated media. I've never seen that before. In Canadian politics, manipulated media. Don't trust it, in other words. You can't trust it. It's manipulated. This politician is trying to manipulate you by manipulating the media. It's so doctored, it's so edited, that you shouldn't believe it, you shouldn't trust it. It's Trumpian. It's fake news. From Chrystia Freeland, former, journalist. Way to go. Way to go. That's just super. And what kind of look is that for the Liberals? My goodness, you tried to move heaven and earth to impose new regulations on the rest of us with your draconian Bill C-10, creating all kinds of new rules about ordinary Canadians and what we can and can't post on our own social media accounts. Maybe we need a bill like C-10 to protect us from the Liberal Party. Fake news, fake news. Media manipulation, Liberal style. You are fake news. 28 days to go, and the Liberals must be thinking, why did we call this election? And that's one of the questions I want to put to you this morning. Well, kind of a variation on it. My question would be, should we be having this election at all? Should we be having this election at all? I think about the sorts of things the Liberals have dangled out there for voters. Okay, $10 a day childcare and paid sick days. But there were 2 more years before the country had to have an election. Surely Mr. Trudeau, with the support of the other left-wing parties in the House of Commons, would have been able to move forward on both childcare and paid sick days. There's no reason we had to have an election to promise those to voters. Parliament could be working on those 2 issues today. Same with vaccine mandates. And the House could be sitting today talking about the situation in Afghanistan, instead everyone distracted because of the election. Throw in, Delta variant, 700 cases in Ontario. You have a darn fine question that needs an answer. Should we be having this election at all? And another question I want to ask you this morning. Is it wrong to talk about trying to do better with the Canadian healthcare system? Is that off limits or something? What's wrong with talking about healthcare reform? Are we not allowed to talk about healthcare in Canada? Not allowed to talk about how things might be improved? What's not working right now? Healthcare is the single greatest expense for government. By far, nothing even comes close. And a lot of shortcomings have been revealed in the last year and a half. So trying to come up with ways of having better healthcare outcomes is exactly the kind of thing a leader, a potential prime minister, should be talking about. Considering the current prime minister calls this the most consequential election since the end of the Second World War. Instead, the leader who actually talked about it is attacked in a fake news video labeled media manipulation on Twitter. Should we be having this election at all? And what's wrong with talking about health care reform? We'll get into that during the Talkback Hour here on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic. But it's been going really well, and some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just micro-processors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the night market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great, you know, the community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So still ahead on our show, we're here till noon. Philip Cross, former senior official at StatsCan, now with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, talk about the cost of living, the deficit, do the rich pay their fair share? Barry McLoughlin from TransformLeaders.ca on who is winning the election campaign and winning from a messaging point of view. Geoffrey, Johnston, international affairs columnist, Kingston Whig-Standard. We'll talk about the latest in Afghanistan. All ahead on the Rob Snow Show. What are small business owners, medium-sized business owners, independent business owners needing? Whoever takes this election campaign. Dan Kelly is back with me from the CFIB, Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Good morning.
Good morning.
Very nice to hear from you. Nonpartisan, right? You're nonpartisan.
Yes.
So,
strictly nonpartisan for 50 years.
What have you thought about what you've heard so far after the first week of the election campaign? Policies that would affect your members?
Yeah, look, going into the election, there was great concern among our members that most of the parties will have moved on in their agendas and really have almost forgotten about the fact that the pandemic's economic effects are still massive on small and medium-sized firms. But I have to admit, after the first week of that campaign, a bit more optimistic. We saw from the Liberals and the Conservatives election promises that seem to recognize that the pandemic is still very much a real issue for small firms, particularly the giant economic effects that it is having. So the Liberals proposed a couple of big things for small firms. For the tourism sector, they proposed to extend the wage and the rent subsidy out until till the end of the winter. They're going to return it to its 75% maximum level for that sector alone. They've also proposed, the Liberals, to extend the hiring incentive that they put in place. It's up to a 50% incentive where the government picks up the tab for any new hiring in businesses. That will be extended, I think, till end of March of next year.
So Dan, sorry, just if I could just jump in there, Dan. So that would cover costs like what then? For a hiring incentive. The
hiring incentive for the Liberals plan, it's already in place. It's in place right now, and they're extending it until the end of March. It covers any wages for work, 50% of any wages if you hire new staff over your levels in the spring. Also, if you increase wages. And also if you give your employees additional hours. So any bump up in your payroll, up to half of that would be covered by the subsidy, and that would extend now until the end of March of next year.
So it's another payroll subsidy then?
It is.
Yeah,
it's really designed to kind of wean people off of the wage subsidy, but it's specific for new hiring. So if your employees were at a consistent level throughout the pandemic, you're not going to get anything out of it. But those that are bumping up hiring, they would benefit from it.
Okay. All right. What do you think of what the Conservatives have offered so far? What's on offer there?
Yeah, they're the biggest piece that we like from the Conservative campaign is that they have committed to basically reopen the CEBA loan program. This is a program that the Liberals created while in office. It provided a $60,000 loan, of which up to a third was forgivable. So you could borrow up to $60,000 from a bank, and you'd only have to repay $40,000 at the end of it. It was immensely popular. 800,000 businesses took out these loans during the course of the pandemic in order to get them through. That program, unfortunately, though, has closed. And the Conservatives have talked about reopening it, giving it a new name, of course, but reopening it and bumping up the loan amount to $200,000 and making 25% of it forgivable. That's a big, big move, and I know would be well received by many businesses that are desperate for some cash to try to keep themselves afloat. The Tories have also promised their own hiring incentive. It's a 25% hiring incentive for any new position you create, and it goes up to 50% if you hire people that have been unemployed for a longer period of time. So it's similar to the Liberal proposal, has a couple of important nuances. It includes new businesses, which the Liberal proposal does not. So depending on the type of business you have, you might like the Liberal promise or the Conservative promise better.
Sure. What about the New Democrats?
The NDP, they haven't put out any specific small business platform ideas.
Okay.
They have, though, proposed, as all parties have, some things that worry us. The NDP has talked about, and we don't have details yet, they've talked about bumping up the capital gains inclusion rate to 75%, and that would be a worry for a lot of small firms.
Okay. What would you like to see that isn't being offered by any of the parties right now?
You know, we none of the parties really have a good long-term plan to get the economy back on its feet. There's still a lot of work to be done on that front. There are some pieces of the full Conservative plan that I think that move us in that direction. The other parties, though, have not released their full platform, so perhaps there are some things coming from the Liberals, the NDP, Bloc, or Green Party on that front. We're watching that very closely. All the parties, though, have a few things that worry us. The Conservatives' plan for the GST holiday isn't something that we're super excited about. The Liberals have proposed 10 days of paid sick time for every federally regulated employee, and also proposing that they work with provinces to try to do the same. That would add a huge new cost to businesses and some real worries about implementation. And that would be really poorly timed if they went in that direction. So of course, all the parties are going to have some things that we don't like in addition to things that we do. Okay.
What about labor shortages and the income supports? They seem to be in a collision course with one another. Some employers are saying we can't find workers because people don't want to lose the income support, like the Canada Recovery Benefit. What should happen there?
You're absolutely right. The shortage of labor is one of the fastest growing issues right now, as now most businesses across the economy are at least allowed to technically open. Many employers are calling their workers back or trying to find new workers and coming up really short. It's a complicated issue. It is certainly not the only piece of this is not CRB, but it is an element of that. The fact is that the way that the system was designed during COVID, we needed to have income support for Canadians that lost their jobs, including the self-employed. But the problem is the way that the government has structured this is that right now you get $300 regardless of how much you've worked, regardless of how much you made pre-COVID. So if you were, like there are many, many young people that perhaps worked a job, part-time job, working 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, you could conceivably make double the amount if you stay on CRB than if you go back to work. You would certainly in many instances make the same if you don't work than if you do. That doesn't make any sense. Keep the income support, absolutely. Make sure that people that are unemployed have access to, that don't have a job to come back to, that they have income. But for goodness sakes, let's not pay Canadians more than they were making pre-COVID. Otherwise, why on earth would they return to the workforce?
Okay. Thank you, Dan Kelly.
Anytime at all.
Yeah, great stuff. From the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, that's Dan Kelly. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 24 degrees, feels like 31. In Smith Falls, 25, and it feels like 33. Here's what's making news this hour. It was a tragic collision this morning on the 417 at Panmure Road, just before 1 o'clock. A pickup truck with a trailer attached was stopped in a live lane. Now, the OPP say a man and a woman were between the truck and the trailer when it was struck by a transport. Both those people were pronounced dead at the scene. The transport driver was not injured. 417 eastbound lanes remain closed at Panmure. G7 leaders invited to a meeting on Afghanistan hosted by the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It's not clear if Justin Trudeau will take part. Johnson will be asking American President Joe Biden to extend the current American involvement past their deadline of August 31st to assist getting those who want to get out of Afghanistan to be able to leave. Epidemiologist Dr. David Fissman confirms on Twitter he's quitting the Ontario Science Advisory Table. He says he's increasingly uncomfortable that political considerations appear to be driving outputs from the table. Dr. Fissman is a vocal critic of the province's pandemic response. In the last few days, even accusing the science table of holding back COVID modeling that's predicting a dismal fall. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Live coverage of the election campaign right now. Mr. Trudeau in Halifax taking some questions from reporters after announcing an election promise to hire 7,500 family doctors and nurses.
Past few days and his policies. The Conservatives have released their platform, but you've not yet released yours. Will you commit to doing so before the debates take place next week?
I look forward to sharing all of our big ideas for this country over the coming weeks. I know that Canadians have been through a difficult year with this pandemic, challenges faced both in the immediate, but also reflections on how we need to improve Canada for the coming years. And just as we had people's back during this pandemic, we will continue to have their backs in the years to come. With an ambitious plan that invests in Canadians, invests in housing, invests in fighting against climate change and creating good jobs, investing in families with childcare and supports for seniors. I'm excited about all the ambitious ideas we have to share with Canadians, and we will share them throughout this campaign. Nous avons
But will the question was, will the platform be released before the leaders' debate? He didn't say, yes, it will be released, or no, it won't be, right?
Seen the needs that we have during the pandemic. We've seen our vulnerabilities and the need for improvement in our healthcare system, but also the need to step up our fight against climate change and to help protect the more vulnerable and our seniors. So we will be there to protect people as we were during the pandemic. And this is in clear contrast with the idea of going backwards as the Tories are suggesting, and that's what.
That answers the question of whether or not you'll commit to releasing it before next week, but I do also want to ask you about Afghanistan. There are now some Canadian forces around the airport basically standing guard. They're not able to pull people through the crowds, which are about half a kilometer long, according to sources on the ground. They say the IRCC is still giving people unclear and dangerous directions to go to the airport. They're not communicating where potential Taliban checkpoints could be. What are you doing to get people to the airport more safely, and are you negotiating with the Taliban, as other countries have, to try to get our citizens past their checkpoints?
First of all, everyone within the Canadian government's Foreign Affairs Department and our military is very much focused on getting people out to safety. IRCC is working around the clock to both process and give people the accurate information so they can get out to safety. Our forces on the ground have all the necessary authorizations to do what they feel is necessary to save as many people as quickly as possible. And we absolutely trust the extraordinary members of the Canadian Armed Forces who know well what the situation is on the ground and how to best help. We will continue to be there to support them. We will continue to be there to work with our allies to ensure that we're getting people out to safety, because that's what Canadians expect.
Okay, let's leave that 9:36 here. Rob Snow Show on City News. And Philip Cross joins me now this morning, former senior official at Statistics Canada with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute these days. Good morning and welcome back, Mr. Cross. It's nice to hear from you.
Good morning, Rob. It's good to be back.
Well, look, before we get into the size of the deficit and what can ever be done to chip away at that monumental number, I do have to ask you, because in a previous appearance on the program, you called the Consumer Price Index one of the most important products that Statistics Canada does, and the latest reading was 3.7% for the all items inflation number. Big, strong number. What did you think of it? What kind of inflationary environment are we in right now, in your opinion, Mr. Cross?
Well, strongly upwards. And the sad thing is, I think the 3.7% likely understates inflation. Statistics Canada, the CPI is not built to measure prices when there's a lot of shortages. Shortages are a cost for people. When you have to go to a restaurant, you have to wait an extra 15 minutes for your meal, or pretty much there's shortages everywhere you go in our society. That's a cost to consumers. And as I say, it's because we're not the Soviet Union and we're not used to shortages. Statistics Canada really doesn't have a methodology to build that into price increases. So if we took account of things like that, or the increase in used car prices, the underlying rate of inflation is probably trending a lot higher. The good news is that we haven't seen this pop up in wages. So I don't think this burst of price increases that we're seeing is going to become permanent. Will carry over until it's reflected in wage increases.
Okay.
So there's still a chance that it's not. It's still a chance that this story the central bank puts out, that it's transitory, and it's possible that that will be true.
But wages aren't a specific component of the Consumer Price Index, are they, Mr. Cross?
No, but they're the major cost, particularly of services. So why I'm looking at wages so closely is that once I see wage increases go up, then we're going to see the price of a lot of services go up. Right now, a lot of the inflation we're seeing is in goods. Like food at home, or gasoline, filling up at the pump, those types of things. We're not seeing widespread increases in services yet, but that's what I'm worried about.
All right, let's talk about this deficit here. $354 billion deficit, give or take. $1 billion here, $10 billion here, whatever the number is today. Okay. When I put this to my listeners, what can we do about this? You know what I get? I get kind of this sense of hopelessness that, my goodness, the hole is so big we're never going to climb out of it. What do you think about that view?
You can always climb out of it. We had, proportionally to the economy, we had a worse deficit coming out of World War II. So it seems quite daunting, but through a combination of restraint, a concept admittedly this government doesn't seem too familiar with, and economic growth, you can deal with these things. It's not hopeless. It's certainly daunting. It's the biggest challenge of our lifetimes, but there is a way of dealing with it. Unfortunately, this government doesn't seem to have any way of dealing with it. As I say, it's going to take a combination of restraint and of economic growth, and the actions of this government are mostly going in the opposite direction. They're coming up with new social spending programs, and they're doing everything possible, it seems, to slow economic growth. So I wouldn't look to this government for a lot of solutions. The solutions of other parties are a lot better. That the NDP wants to tax their way out.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that in a minute. But let's say you have two courses of action. One is you can cut spending. The other is you can raise taxes, and let's deal with them in silos, first of all, instead of in combination. Cut spending or raise taxes? What gives you more bang for the deficit-fighting buck?
Well, there was a study done by the IMF and one of the leading scholars in the world on public finance looked at this question, and the question was, the answer was, spending cuts are the way to deal with these types of situations. The tax increases actually dampen growth. They discourage investment and innovation. Whereas spending increases basically have a neutral effect in the economy. I know that might surprise a lot of people because the narrative that circulates in the political circles in our country is that, oh my God, slash and burn, spending cuts worsen recessions. And in fact, the economists have shown that the exact opposite is the case.
Okay. What about doing a combination? For example,
end up doing.
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Cross. Yeah.
Reasons there usually have to be some token tax increases. Canada, the IMF cited Canada in the mid-1990s as a very good example of what usually happens. We relied on spending restraint for 80% of the deficit reduction in the mid-90s, and the other 20% came from tax increases. So, given that there have to be some tax increases, you want to keep them as light as possible. So 20-25% tax increases and 70-75% spending cuts tends to be the preferred mix, the ideal mixture of both economic and political considerations.
Okay. As you said, the Democrats are running on wealth taxes, making sure the wealthy, quote unquote, pay their fair share. What do you think about that? Do the rich pay enough tax?
Well, yeah, how much more do you want them to pay? I mean, I wrote an op-ed in the Post on Friday, and I noted that the top 1% already pay 21% of all taxes. So if you take the top 10% in this country, you're talking about well over half of all taxes. So, exactly how much of a burden do you want the wealthy in this country to carry? By the way, I also note that the bottom 50% of taxpayers pay only 5% of all taxes. So we already have quite a progressive income tax. At some point you have to say how much is enough. Thomas Mulcair once said that once you take more than 50% of a person's income, you're talking confiscation and not taxation. And we've reached that point already in several provinces. So even a former NDP leader would say, clearly the rich in this country are already paying more than their fair share.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. Always nice to hear from you and have you on our show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is Philip Cross, former chief economic analyst for StatsCan, senior fellow with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. We'll talk about the election campaign. Coming up next with Barry McLoughlin, senior partner, TransformLeaders.ca, senior fellow with the Masters of Political Management program at Carleton. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
To opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, guests, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. We're thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food, food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
All right, let's talk about this election campaign. Barry McLoughlin, senior partner, TransformLeaders.ca. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm okay. How about you?
Good. I love it when things warm up.
Well, you should be very happy now then.
Absolutely.
It's tropical, for crying out loud. But look, let me ask you, what have you thought of the campaign so far? It's certainly not been the best of times for the Liberal Party.
Well, it's warming up politically, that's for sure. You're right. I mean, just compared to a week ago, it's amazing how that the Liberal support seems to have at least flattened, and it looks like every day the Prime Minister, even though he's kind of reaching for the desperado, throw mud at the wall and see what sticks. But he's on the defense, and there's no way you're in a winning campaign when you're just playing defense every day. And he hasn't convinced Canadians that we need this election. I thought that might be over with in a few days, but clearly it looks like that's holding on as things start to worsen.
Okay, the search for a wedge issue. They're on healthcare and private delivery of healthcare now, but it's sort of. I mean, it's like their third attempt at trying to seek out a wedge issue here. What do you think about this? Nothing seems to be really lasting.
Near the end, it's hard to believe that it's that desperate that early. But notice really what's going on here. That with the Christopher Freeland and the doctored tweet, this shows you that we are in a world in which it's very, very easy to make attacks, and it's very attack-oriented. I'm not saying the Tories haven't done their share over the years. They have. So I think that there's no question that it shows to me that reaching for that, I think, is a waste of effort. I mean, first of all, most Canadians agree with having X-rays and the diagnostics in the private sector. It hasn't, most provinces do it. It's really not an issue, but he's trying to make it an issue, and that just shows desperation, I think.
Desperation. Okay. I agree with you. What have you thought of the Conservative campaign? I said it last week. I'll say it again this morning. My expectations were super low going into the campaign, but they've surprised so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is, in a funny way, it's similar to Justin Trudeau in the 2015 election. He was the third-ranked leader, very, very low expectations, especially going into the debates, but he was just low expectations. And really Mr. O'Toole, because he really is an unknown commodity to many Canadians, anything he does tends to exceed expectations. So he is running apparently the strongest campaign. He appears relaxed, confident, even when they throw everything at him. He deals with them very well. He's in fine, mid-campaign performance mode. It was quite amazing, and I think it has exceeded expectations already.
Okay. Maybe if few people know you, I guess maybe it's actually an advantage. I don't know, Barry. I'd like to know what you think. Maybe they haven't formed a firm opinion on you just yet. They haven't had this ingrained feeling about it. It's not like after 10 years of Harper, you hate the guy or you love the guy or whatever.
Well, usually it's not an advantage to be an unknown commodity. It really is not.
Okay.
It's not one you want to seek out. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
But usually what happens in that case is that the opposing party defines you before you define yourself. And I think that you see what the Liberals are trying to define him as, Harper Light or so on. It's not sticking. It is. They haven't been able to negatively define him, which is very interesting. I thought they had months to do that, and I'm amazed they didn't do that in pre-campaign mode. Now they're into 20-something days, trying desperately to put a label on him, and I don't think they're succeeding at that.
Well, and if that's the case, maybe they've already missed their opportunity. Right. Well, yeah. I mean, he's been there more than a year, so.
Yeah, right? You'd think they would have successfully done it by now. Yeah. So I'm quite amazed that they haven't been able to. Part of it, I think, the way that Aaron O'Toole comes across, he doesn't seem to be a guy, with horns sticking out of his head. He seems like a normal guy, and it's really hard to, the old bit of. And Jack Layton nailed this in 2011. The guy that you want to have a beer with, and I think that Aaron O'Toole is sliding nicely into that role.
Okay, interesting. What have you thought of the New Democrat campaign?
Well, I'm a little surprised that it's not showing up in the numbers. I mean, Jagmeet Singh is a really good campaigner. He proved that last time out. He's at ease with what he does. He plays the visuals very well. But he hasn't benefited from the collapse of the Greens, and the numbers are just surprising that he isn't even gaining any traction so far. That could change in the debate, though. He's a very good debater, and he could actually be transformative in that debate, gaining some numbers.
Well, I guess that's the big thing. It's still early. It's still early before Labor Day, but. It's a short campaign, and there are only 28 days left, and you can vote in an advance poll September 10th.
Yep.
So...
And, of course, the mail-in ballots will be huge this time. But I think the other point to make, though, is that this could be that one per generation, the calling an election prematurely when you don't have to. COVID numbers are dangerously coming back up in quite a number of locations across the country. People pay attention to that. Afghanistan has reminded us that we're not finished there, and he's not on the job doing it, and it looks like he's not on the job doing it. Whether that's true or not is a very secondary question. But people aren't letting go of the issue. I'm sorry, I'm missing why we called it. And Mr. Trudeau has given you all, he's trying everything. Well, the $10 a day, he's trying anything, but it's not sticking. He doesn't have a really tight, clear message on why are we calling it now other than you get a chance to, quote, weigh in. That's it. There's no other real compelling reason.
All right. Barry McLoughlin, always good to have you on our program. Mr. Singh is campaigning, taking reporters' questions in Montreal, so we'll join this live, and we'll talk to you next week, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Barry McLoughlin, senior partner, TransformLeaders.ca, as the NDP leader rolls into Montreal. This is Jagmeet Singh taking some questions.
Is he not encroaching on provincial jurisdiction?
Talking about health care again.
Well, health care is a challenge. When we talk to people, they're not concerned with jurisdictional issues. At the federal level, it's obvious that we need to work with the provinces and territories, and we would do that. But for me, the big question is the focus remains, what can we do to help people? And very often what I've asked people, what can we do to help people? Very often, he kind of dodges the question. But as a leader, we need to find solutions, not look for excuses. And so I want to improve services. I want to improve our social programs. And we can do this by working with the provinces and territories. But it shouldn't be an excuse that we can't do anything because of jurisdiction conflicts. But he's against Medicare. He's against removing private long-term care. And so
we have Tom Perry from CBC.
There are solutions.
Question. Of course. You talk in your news release today about eliminating harmful subsidies. And in your backgrounder, you have a link to a report by Environmental Defense about $18 billion in annual subsidies. That report talks about $1.7 billion for reclamation of orphan wells. There's money for a low-carbon economy fund, low-carbon and zero-emissions fuels fund. So money to help fossil fuel companies reduce their carbon emissions, their fossil footprint. Do you think that is a bad subsidy? Would you cut that?
What we'd like to do is invest directly into remediation of oil wells. We'd like to invest directly in retrofitting some of these oil wells into geothermal plants. We can make those investments directly. Our concern is what we've seen for a long time are subsidies into the fossil fuel sector, and that is the wrong approach. And we want to make it really clear. New Democrats want to end those subsidies, and we want to invest directly into creating jobs and directly into protecting the environment. What we've seen a long time from Liberals and Conservatives is this notion that you can give money away with really no strings attached to large corporations and hope that the money will actually end up in workers' hands or end up in doing what we need to defend the environment. That approach has been shown again and again not to work. We want to direct our investments to the people that need help, to workers, and to protecting our planet directly.
So can you specify, would it be all subsidies? What are you talking about? What would you cut?
All subsidies. New Democrats believe in ending fossil fuel subsidies, period. It's been going on for too long. It's been something that the Liberals have promised to do and broken that promise again and again. New Democrats don't want to be like the Liberals. We want to make it very clear. We are here committed to ending those subsidies, and we want to invest in the future. We want to invest in workers. We want to remediate oil wells, but we're not going to do that through subsidies. We're going to do that through direct investments.
Next question, we have David Aiken from Global
All right,
News.
we're going to leave this. Jagmeet Singh. We'll hear from Aaron O'Toole a little bit later. He's supposed to do a media availability. He's back kind of in his bunker there at the Westin Hotel. He got a lot of flack for not getting out and about. The Prime Minister or the Liberal leader in Halifax, Mr. Singh, is in Montreal. Wanted to give you a flavor of the new work week and the election campaign. The Talk Back Hour is coming up next at 750-1310 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
This is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under a heat warning and feeling in the low 30s. It's 24 degrees in Ottawa, 25 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. 2 people killed in an early morning crash on the eastbound 417 near Panmure Road. OPP say a pickup truck was stopped in a live lane around 1 o'clock this morning when it was struck by a transport truck. 2 people were outside the vehicle, and between it and the trailer that was attached, they both died at the scene. The 417 eastbound closed for several hours between Panmure and March Road for the investigation. It's not known how long that closure will last. Family members of the 2 who died have not all been notified yet, so police are not releasing their names for the time being. City News Time 10:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Hot, humid conditions again today. Slight chance of showers, isolated storms. A high 30 will feel like 38. Scattered thunderstorms possible tonight, the low 20. And tomorrow, slight chance of showers. Otherwise, mainly sunny. 32, feeling like 39. For today, the high 30.
And right now, feeling in the low 30s, it's 25 degrees in Smiths Falls and 24 degrees in Ottawa. Promises on healthcare and climate change being made on this day 9 of the federal election campaign. However, a controversy about a tweet is dominating discussion. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau first up promising a total of $9 billion to eliminate the backlog in wait times in our healthcare system, as well as hire 7,500 new family doctors and nurses across the country. But a tweet from the Liberals is gaining a lot of attention since it was deemed as manipulated media by Twitter. In the clip of Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole that they tweeted out, he's asked if he is in favor of bringing in private companies for healthcare in Canada. He says yes. However, the clip was edited and left out a part where O'Toole says our universal access to health care remains paramount. When asked about it, Trudeau doubles down.
I don't know about you, but to me, it sounds like just another way of saying he wants to go back to the Harper era of cuts to health care and private investments. Well, that's not the way forward.
A lawyer for the Conservatives has written to the Elections Commissioner asking for an investigation. O'Toole will speak later today in Ottawa. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in Montreal, where he's talking climate change, vowing to eliminate subsidies to big oil companies and direct those funds to clean tech and energy. The Green Party leader speaks in Toronto later today. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 10:03. It's the highest daily COVID case count in the province since early June. That number recorded yesterday, over 700. Also, a resignation of a member of the COVID-19 Science Advisory Table. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
University of Toronto epidemiologist Dr. David Fissman confirms on Twitter he's quitting Ontario's Science Advisory Table. He says he's increasingly uncomfortable that political considerations appear to be driving outputs from that table. Dr. Fissman has been a vocal critic of the province's pandemic response in the last few days, even accusing the science table itself of holding back COVID modeling that would predict a dismal fall. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
Also from Toronto today, anyone going to a Blue Jay regular season or potentially a playoff game after September 13th will have to show proof of vaccination. That policy will apply to all fans and staff who are over the age of 12. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson plans to meet with the other G7 leaders tomorrow for urgent talks on Afghanistan.
Crunch time Tuesday. Prime Minister Boris Johnson plans to press President Joe Biden at an emergency virtual meeting of Group of 7 leaders for more time. The bottom line from London, without the Americans, other countries will have no choice but to stop their own operations to help people fleeing the Taliban takeover. If Biden gets behind the request, the next question is, will the Taliban be in the mood to comply? Tom Rivers, ABC News, London.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The 2 questions for you. Should we be having this election at all? That's one question. And question number 2, what's wrong with talking about health care reform? Why is that off limits? Why is that off limits? Boom, and just like that, there's less than a month to go in the election campaign. It's going by fast, isn't it? Election day is September 20th, 28 days from today. And, people will be voting in advance polls before that, September 10th, David tells me. So it doesn't leave the parties really with a lot of time to make their pitch to Canadians and very much mail-in ballots, right? But to my first question, should we be having this election at all? I mean, how would you answer that? Should we be having this election at all? The Liberals called this snap election, but more than a week into the campaign, I don't think you can really say that they've told Canadians a credible reason as to why they've called the election. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. This is my own opinion. I think a lot of people are wise to why we're having the election. They know that this election is about nothing more than the ambitions of the Prime Minister, the desire for Mr. Trudeau to turn his minority government into a majority government. Because outside of that, he's been asked plenty of times, why are we having this election? But there's been no there when it comes to his answer. He called the election, but he hasn't released his election platform. You heard Mercedes Stevenson from Global News say, are you going to release your election platform at least before the debates? He said, I'm excited to release my platform. Yeah, but will you do it for the debates? Before the debates? No answer. No answer. You call an election, you don't even release an election platform? The NDP and the Conservatives, they both released their election platforms. The Liberals, you called the election, you can't even be bothered to go through the motions to release your platform? Lazy, sloppy. And another big question that the media certainly has picked up on is what they have offered could have been worked on, even likely passed, given the previous makeup of the House of Commons. $10 a day childcare. There's certainly a debate to be had about the merits of such a program versus either, childcare checks or tax rebates. But the fact is, on $10 a day childcare, nationalized childcare, government-run childcare, whatever you want to call it, the Liberals would have no problem in advancing such a policy in the House of Commons. You give a blank check to Quebec, like they did, to appease the Bloc and get them on side. And of course, the NDP is going to be in favor of nationalized childcare. They've been calling for it for years. We could have MPs passing bills in the House right now to nationalize childcare, to offer a $10 a day daycare program. If it was that pressing, that important, they could have had a summer session in the House if it was so important. Get it done in a few weeks. Same with paid sick days. The announcement last week from Mr. Trudeau, paid sick days. How many days did Mr. Singh stand in the House of Commons? We need paid sick days. We need more paid sick days. More paid sick days. They would have passed paid sick days in a day. My point, why do you need to have an election campaign on these issues? You don't need to have an election campaign on these issues. You need your MPs in the House of Commons. And vaccine mandates. They could have passed some kind of vaccine mandate for the public service through the House, no problem, even by the Liberals' own admission. Now it won't happen until sometime in October anyway, because there's no parliament to speak of. We're having this election instead. And then couple that, no election platform. You have the situation in Afghanistan playing out on cable news, social media around the clock. Delta variant, all the unknowns about the Delta variant. Breakthrough infections, vaccine efficacy. You have to ask the Liberals, what's it all about? What's it all about? Why are we having an election? When all of this important work should really have the government's undivided attention, why are we having an election? 750-1310, 750-1310. Dave in Ottawa. Dave, you're on City News. Good morning.
Oh, first, Rob, let me tell you what a pleasure it is to finally get through.
Well, thank you, Dave.
I am an avid listener of yours.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
And I've kept my pulse on the election.
Good.
I've listened to all the news reports, looked at COVID up and down, where the government and the world, quite frankly, has dropped the ball on COVID-19. And first off, society would think of me as a minority. I happen to be in a wheelchair, but with a brain like a steel trap.
Okay, Dave.
And I see all this SHIT going on around me.
Okay. It's no better when you spell it, Dave. It's no better when you spell it, sir. So let's not use that word, okay? All right?
Okay, but
yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm
That's
animated.
okay, Dave. Dave, what I want to get at is, should we be having the election at all, given COVID and Afghanistan and all of these other issues? Should we be having an election at all?
I agree with the fact that you think Trudeau's trying to pad his numbers, and he doesn't need any more stroking. What we need is people to roll up their sleeves and get the business of the country on the map instead of passing the buck, like you just said. Mr. Singh wants this. Aaron wants this. Let's just do like Pearson did with the flag and get everybody in the same room and lock the door until a consensus is reached. Because Canada, as much as I love this country, can be the laughing stock of the world.
All right, Dave. I have full phone line, so I'm going to have to move along. But I thank you for your call this morning, Dave. I appreciate it. Again, I'm asking two questions this morning. Okay, in light of the manipulated media tweet from Chrystia Freeland that she seems quite proud of, and the Prime Minister doubled down on this morning. Two questions. Should we have the election at all? And what's wrong with talking about health care reform? Are you not allowed to talk about the single largest expense for government anymore? If you're a political leader, if you're a politician, you're not. No, can't talk about health care. Can't talk. No, there's only one way to do health care. That's the Canadian way, don't you know? Des Carp, you're on City News. Good morning.
Good morning,
Should
Rob.
we be having this election at all?
No, definitely not.
Okay, all right.
I tried to figure out some way that if I was him and I called the election, what I would be able to say to the people. There is nothing I can think of. Every time he thinks of something, he puts his foot in it again. And then your second one, I got one after that, Rob, so I don't forget.
Okay. All right, okay. But is there something wrong with talking about trying to do better with the healthcare system?
Well, for sure not.
Like, wouldn't you expect if somebody was running, say, for premier or for prime minister, you would like them to talk about health care? Half the taxes that you pay, half the taxes that I pay, half the taxes that David pays goes to pay for health care. Single largest expense that the government has. Are we not supposed to talk about it during an election campaign? Is it off limits?
Maybe he's afraid to put his foot in it again.
No,
maybe. Go through a cow field.
Yeah, maybe. He's just watched the Nova Scotia Liberal Party go down in flames because they didn't talk about health care.
That's right. That too. Yeah. I was keeping close track of that. And I got one thing that really got me, that gave me, I couldn't even sit in my chair this morning when I heard it.
Okay.
Chrystia Freeland. I never thought that she would be so helpful to the Conservative Party. What a bouquet of roses.
Okay. Thank you, Des. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Chrystia Freeland has now been labeled as a media manipulator. Isn't that a great look for the former head of Reuters in the United States, former journalist Chrystia Freeland? Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Media Manipulation. Add that to her titles. 10:15, Rob Snow Show, City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned. We have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. At that time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And people, and for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Like, did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, you know, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You know, you can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. You know, earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, think it might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, you know. And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when come to clothing. Like, it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, I mean, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really wanna shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You wanna be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
I don't know if there's panic in the Liberal war room just yet. I mean, if the Conservatives can barely crack 32%, they're not going to win anything at 32%. But there are reasons to be concerned. I still think the Liberals are going to win the most seats, but this insatiable desire for a majority government that they so obviously have, I think that as of right now, it's very much in doubt. The national race is obviously tightened. The Liberal lead, which was once substantial, is now down to just a few points. Maybe it's a tie. I mentioned Ecos, some nightly tracking data a few days ago that says the Conservatives are in the lead nationally and have the lead in Ontario. And if that's true, I mean, it's a whole new ballgame. That is something of great significance. But again, one poll. And you see the Liberals have tried to wedge O'Toole on all sorts of things. Vaccine mandate fizzled, right? Abortion, that was an issue for about 45 minutes. And yesterday the Liberals went fear-mongering on healthcare reform as though there's something bad with trying to improve the healthcare system. Oh my gosh, how dare you try and improve the healthcare system? And they doctored a video that was recorded by my friend Kate Harrison from Summa Strategies. Is going to be on my show next Wednesday. Kate will be here on Wednesday. She's like the star of the campaign so far this week. They took her video and edited the heck out of it and then tweeted it out as though it's the gospel's truth. And they were called on it. And this morning, the Liberal campaign wakes up and their attack has totally backfired on them because that tweet was labeled by Twitter as manipulated media. Manipulated media is a $10 way of saying fake news. Chrystia Freeland, you are fake news. You are fake news. You're Trump. You're the Canadian Donald Trump. Congratulations.
Fake news.
Fake news.
It's fake. Phony.
Fake. Phony.
You are fake news.
Give me some more of that. I actually like
false and fake and never happened. Totally fake news.
That's it? That's all you have? Okay. I mean, imagine those are the people that want to control your own internet experience and want to regulate what you can and can't post to social media. Want awesome controls over the news media. Want to be able to regulate who is and who isn't a journalist, what is and isn't a news outlet. Labeled fake news by their friends at Twitter. Oh, what did Chrystia Freeland used to do? Oh, journalist. Sure. Yeah, that's how the Liberal campaign is going as we enter the second week of this campaign. 2 questions for you this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, should we be having the election at all? And what's wrong with talking about health care reform? When did that become off limits? Anne in Ottawa. Anne.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
There is no way we should be having this election, and it's fun to start seeing the desperation the Liberals are getting into, and a lot of people are having the same notion. Why the heck are we having this election? It's ridiculous, and we have got to stop standing on this pulpit and defending our healthcare system like it's great. It's not. I mean, look what just happened in long-term care. There's interminable waits for all kinds of things like knee replacements and everything like that. We need to get into, we've already got 2-tiered healthcare for people that can have access to physiotherapy and things like that. We need to open it up so then there aren't as many wait times for people. Like people who can afford to, say, pay $100 for an MRI, okay, you get it there, and then there are fewer people waiting in the other line. Why is that so afraid? But all these socialists, no, you can't touch our socialized medicine. It's not sustainable. We're already being taxed to death. We don't have free health care in this country, and it's just getting more and more expensive every year and worse every year. And I just hope this election gets even worse for Trudeau because $5 million, is that what this election is costing? And we need that.
More than 600. It's $610 million.
Oh my God! We don't owe enough.
You get a lot of health care. I mean, Mr. Trudeau announced today that we're going to hire 7,500 doctors and nurses. Well, you don't have to have an election to hire 7,500 doctors and nurses. You could maybe not spend $600 million having the election. You leave over some money, leave some money left over to actually hire the doctors and
exactly. And I've said it before, this guy does not care about what's in the interest of this country, clearly.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, yeah, so the 2 questions again. Should we be having the election at all? And what's wrong with talking about health care reform? I actually find it refreshing that a politician wants to talk about fixing health care. Imagine that. Robert in Blackburn Hamlet.
Rob,
yes, sir.
If the polls are right, the polls that you mentioned, the Conservative are
finished.
Well, when the polls are close, the NDP people are going to vote Liberal.
Okay.
All the Conservative, they're never going to get in. It's impossible.
Impossible.
No, impossible.
Okay. Is that the way you want it to go, sir, Robert? Or?
If I don't agree with the Conservative on health care and the environment, and that's 2 big things that most Canadians are for, and the Conservatives are against.
Oh, I see.
They can't get in.
Okay. Because the Liberals, in all of their time in office, have done such a wonderful job managing the healthcare system?
No. They haven't done a wonderful job. They're not perfect. But,
they're not perfect. Okay. Yeah. Like, for example, when a woman waits, say 2 days on the floor of the hospital in Hull and ends up dying and her family doesn't even know about it, would you say that that's a great healthcare system, Robert? And we should reward what? We should reward the Liberals for their management of it? What do you think, Robert? Okay, I got you. They're doomed. The Conservatives are doomed. But he does have a point. Because if the polls are tight, and it does look like the Conservatives do have a chance, I actually wrote a Snow and 60 commentary about this just this very morning. Are the Dippers going to fall for this again and say, oh my gosh, the Conservatives are going to win? And Mr. Singh, I really like you. You're a really nice guy. Great TikTok videos, but you're not going to win. So I have to vote for Justin Trudeau. Not because I like Justin Trudeau, but to stop Aaron O'Toole. So the caller, he might just be on to something. Rodney in Ottawa. Good morning, Rodney.
Hey, good morning.
Yep.
Hey, so
should we be having the election at all, given everything that's going on?
No, I'll give you 3 reasons.
3 reasons. Well, okay, make it quick. Okay.
First one's the pandemic.
Pandemic, sure. COVID, Delta, fourth wave.
The second 2 are the forgotten reasons.
Breakthrough infections. Go ahead.
And number 2 is going to be Michael. And then you know what number 3 is?
Oh, the 2 Michaels, you mean?
Well, number 3 is Michael also.
Yeah, so okay. Yeah.
It's hard to negotiate with your allies towards China with the Olympics approaching when your country's under election. After the election's over, you'll be able to negotiate, to look for support.
Okay.
Hey, and then healthcare. I sort of see healthcare and OHIP. I already made a mention.
Well, you had a procedure just canceled, right? Or postponed or something like that?
I had a few of those, but, with healthcare, with OHIP, the important information that I was trying to point out that OHIP doesn't have, they don't have the customer information, So all the customer information would have helped for COVID to access who to give vaccines to in priority. And mention knees, so I'll mention another turnaround for OHIP and lack of customer information for knees. If it's somebody that's a seasonal worker, do you want to do their knee operation if they worked from May until November? Do you want to do their knee operation in April, or do you want to do it in December?
Right. Okay.
If you do it in December, they have a chance to recover.
Yeah. Sure. Good point, Rodney. Good point.
Yeah. Just doesn't have the customer information. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right, Rodney. Good call. We'll be back right after the news. We're talking about the second week of the election campaign, the tightening race, but should we be having this election at all? And since when was it off limits to talk about health care? I see the Bloc leader is in one of the ridings must watch on election night. That's the Trois-Rivières area. The Bloc have it. The Liberals would love to have it. They're promising that high-frequency rail, and the Bloc leader is talking about ethics, and in particular, Mr. Trudeau's lack of ethics. 10:28, back after the news. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under a heat warning in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 25 degrees, feels like 32. And here's what's making news this hour. Ontario reporting an additional 639 new cases of COVID-19 today. Just under 20,000 tests were completed for those numbers in Ottawa. 27 more cases, 6 more in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit. Both Leeds, Grenville, Lanark and Renfrew County have one additional case. The province says it has recorded no new deaths in the past day from that virus. 2 people were killed in an early morning crash on the eastbound 417 near Panmure. Provincial police say a pickup truck was stopped in a live lane when it was hit by a transport truck. 2 people were outside the vehicle and between it and the trailer it was towing, and they were struck and killed. Epidemiologist Dr. David Fissman confirms on Twitter he's leaving the Ontario Science Advisory Table. He says he is increasingly uncomfortable political considerations appear to drive outputs from the table. Dr. Fissman is a vocal critic of the province's pandemic response. In the last few days, even accusing that table of holding back COVID modeling numbers that indicate we're in for a dismal fall. City News Time 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
2 questions for you today. We're on the election again. Go figure. Should we be having an election at all, given everything that's going on? And what's wrong with talking about health care reform? Aaron O'Toole's being attacked for wanting to talk about the biggest expense government has, health care. Why? Why? I mean, here's a story from CTV News from 2 weeks ago. Headlined, Canada's health system ranked second last among 11 countries. Quoting here, a new report has ranked Canada's health system second last, ahead of the United States, among high-income countries. The report, released on Wednesday by the Commonwealth Fund, ranked 11 high-income countries on key health system measures, including equity, access to care, affordability, healthcare outcomes, and administrative efficiency. Pretty much covers it all, doesn't it? The report found that the top-performing health systems overall are Norway, the Netherlands, Australia, while Switzerland, Canada, and the United States were the countries with the worst healthcare systems, respectively. End quote. It was 2 weeks ago. What are the Liberals? I saw Chrysler Freeland's campaign freakout. What are the Liberals doing here? I mean, are they giving themselves the pat on the back after a report like that? Are they doing the wave about the Canadian healthcare system? Are they out there cheerleading? We're second last. We're second last. Give me a C. Give me an A. Yay, we're second last. Ahead of the USA. Yay. Go team. Vote Liberal. We did not make this up. Look, I've been pleading, in fact, with the Conservative Party to hammer away on 2 messages. Affordability, and health care. Ask Canadians to think about, first of all, why is it so expensive to live in Justin Trudeau's Canada? Don't get bogged down in a debate about debt and deficit. The numbers are too big. You make it about the price of hamburger, price of gasoline, price of a loaf of bread, rent, mortgage. You bring it down to the retail level. You don't talk about the flood in town, you talk about the flood in the basement, okay? And you talk about healthcare. Tim Houston just scored a major come-from-behind victory for the Progressive Conservatives in Nova Scotia with a disciplined message. And it was this: healthcare is broken. The Liberals have been there 10 years. They don't want to talk about healthcare. I'm going to talk about healthcare everywhere I go. And it worked. Do you think Nova Scotians are the only people worried about health care? It's a pan-Canadian problem. Let Trudeau go on and spend a couple of days talking about abortion and his price on pollution and $10 a day childcare 5 years from now. People are waiting 8, 9, 10 hours in an emergency room today. People are waiting 2 years for a knee replacement today. People don't have family doctors today. And there's only one party that has a chance of winning the election that is promising in its platform. You know, a platform you can actually read. Be nice if the Liberals got around to releasing one. The Conservatives, the only party promising to increase healthcare transfers to the provinces, basically double them from 3% a year to 6% a year. It's not the Liberal Party that's promising that. What is the Liberal promising? Manipulated media? Fake news? Fake news. You are fake news. Phony and fake. And phony and fake. That's all you got for me?
False and fake and never happened.
I said last week I'd like to hear from the Conservatives more on health care, especially increasing transfers to the provinces. Top of mind issue for a lot of Canadians right now. The opening is right there. It's right there for people. Joanne in Orleans, you're on City News.
Morning.
Hi.
I am thrilled that they're talking about the healthcare system, that what was supposed to be a wedge issue with the Liberals has backfired. You're right, it is top of mind. I think it's appalling that Trudeau wants to implement a big reset and that his starting point isn't the healthcare system after the pandemic. How does that happen? What people may not know is there's such a thing as a hybrid system, like a hybrid car, and that's what many European countries have. So you have private delivery, but it's public paid. So OHIP still covers the services. But because there's competition for that public dollar, more people jump in to deliver the service. So the knee surgery, eye surgery, whatever. I think the Conservatives, like you've mentioned, they have a wonderful opportunity to make this the issue in the best way possible and in a sincere way to promise to work with the premiers by increasing healthcare funding rather than this nonsensical idea of $10 a day daycare, delivering another federal government program. We see that they aren't even funding health care to the limit that they should be. Why would we trust them to fund daycare for decades to come? I'm shocked that, for example, we're worried about beds during the pandemic. The public is getting hammered with numbers, and we're supposed to be worried about hospital beds and access to these beds. But when the Gatineau Hospital closes its emergency department, it just, boom, we're done. Don't send us anyone here. Yep. Drive to Montreal. That doesn't make national news as a national shame. And lo and behold, they've got $10 a day daycare. I mean, we can connect the dots, and the dots should have been connected a long time ago. And that leads me to my next point. I'm thrilled there's an election. Trudeau would be doing this big reset under a minority government I think we should be afraid of what he wants to implement. If he could have done most of it the way that the chips lay now, and that's not good enough. So what on earth is he trying to do? But I think the Conservative campaign is finally being run by professionals who seem to know what they're doing. The country was begging for an alternative to Trudeau. I think even the last election, Scheer's numbers were actually good. In spite of the media hammering the Conservatives got and that he got personally, we have been looking for an alternative, a serious alternative, and perhaps the way this campaign is being handled, the country may see O'Toole as one. I'm not a huge O'Toole fan. I have issues. I have problems with him. But when we look at elections as laying a roadmap, there is something to be said about getting off the Liberal highway. And the way this is turning out, I'm very, very happy because the country is in trouble.
All right, Joanne, thank you. Thank you for your call. Talk back hour, second half, Rob Snow Show, City News, 750-1310. Two lines available there. Chris in Elmont, you're on City News. Chris.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Chris, should we be having this election right now?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
2 years into his term.
Yep.
Into another phase of the COVID nonsense.
Yes.
I really think you're onto something, Rob, because healthcare right now is the thing that needs reform if nothing else does. And just by doubling the healthcare transfers, which all the provinces have been asking for, okay, and Trudeau sort of doesn't answer, okay.
Yep.
You know what? And simply, Scheer is completely different.
Yeah.
Than what
So you don't
the
think there's
Liberal
anything wrong with talking about healthcare reform, do you? It's not like it's some kind of taboo subject. We're not supposed to talk about it.
No, if you're Trudeau, it is. But no, what's interesting is Scheer's highly intelligent. When you go to
O'Toole is the leader. O'Toole. The leader's name is O'Toole.
Sorry, O'Toole. Okay.
All right, I know. This party switches leaders quite often, but it's O'Toole now. Yes.
It's O'Toole. Yeah, but when you do RCAF aircrew selection and they tell you they don't want you to be a pilot, you're too smart. We're going to make you the tactical navigator on the Sea King. This guy is into three-dimensional chess.
Okay. All right.
And he's a real person.
Well, I'd like to know where that Aaron O'Toole has been for the last, year and a half. So, but nevertheless.
You know what? Chris, kept his powder dry.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, Chris, thank you. Thank you, sir. Yep. So 2 questions again. Should we be having the election at all? And what's wrong with talking about wanting to do better with the healthcare system? What's wrong with talking about healthcare reform? Regan and Renfrew, you're on City News. Regan.
Hello, Rob.
Yes, sir.
I think it was...
Oh, bad connection there. Sorry. Have to let you go today, Regan. Al in Ottawa. Al.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
In terms of the election, first of all, absolutely. It's disgusting we're having an election spending $600 million of our money, not his money, our money, in the midst of a fourth wave. It's absolutely disgusting. And in terms of healthcare, of course we should have that debate, but nobody wants to tell the truth. And, we've had two-tier for a long time. It can be administered through public funds. We should have it. We have it on many levels now. But let me just mention one other thing, what's disgusting. I heard your interview last week with this Jenna Suds in Canada North, I guess. And you know what's disgusting? That should not be allowed. You know what? She's keeping her foot in the Ottawa councillor pool while she tries another level. That should not be allowed. She should be ashamed of herself for doing that. And she and everybody else doing this, and there's lots of them do it, either resign from your damn seat and put your name forward at another level, but don't try to keep, your bets hedged on both sides while you're talking to one side of your mouth and doing something else. That's disgusting that she did that, and she should be ashamed of herself for doing that. If you have the gumption and the courage, resign from city council. And I laugh and you say, well, I'm not getting paid. Well, of course you wouldn't get paid. Like, seriously, you wouldn't get paid, of course, for a month. Resign, have the courage to do that, and if not, then don't run, because that was disgusting, her comment on that, and I hope to hell she loses that election.
Okay. It's one to watch, that's for sure, that race, Canada Carleton. I'm watching that one. Yeah. Very interested in what happens out there. Michelle in Ottawa. Michelle.
Rob, is it low-hanging fruit if I call Miss Freeland Fake News Freeland now?
Fake News Freeland. I love it. Yeah. I might steal that from you, actually. So
good. Use it. I love it. What
Fake News
has
Freeland.
The Trudeau government done for the epidemic that we were in 6 years since he's been in government, the opioid crisis?
Yeah.
What has he done? A pandemic has come along and taken the focus off, but what has he done? And listen, we don't need an election. We have enough breakthrough cases happening now. It's really difficult to be knocking on the doors in this heat during a pandemic. You're afraid, the people are afraid, but listen, people aren't happy. And I'm going to tell you a very sad story. Friday, I knocked on a door here in Ottawa South, and the man came to the door and told us that his best friend had the RCMP visit him to tell him that his son had just overdosed and died in Vancouver. and that man was in tears. And I tell you, Rob, this is ridiculous. $600 million could have saved all of these young people, pulled them out of that hell. Instead of turning street life into an industry, get these people proper help and start embracing new technologies and treatment. It's absolutely absurd and unforgivable that you can skip around like this.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Not a lot of love for the Liberals today on the Rob Snow Show. This is City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
I just think when it comes to healthcare, we have to get over this idea that we shouldn't talk about healthcare reform. And I think there has to be some myth busting. The Canadian healthcare system is on an unsustainable track. It's not the best healthcare system in the world. There are already all sorts of layers or tiers, if you will, of private healthcare already. And the demographics are the stuff of nightmare scenarios. Okay, we have an aging population. Older people not only consume more healthcare, but they consume the most healthcare. And yet any idea of even talking about reforming the healthcare system or looking at new and innovative ways of delivering healthcare are met with howls and screams of protest from those with a very rigid ideology, okay, like Fake News Freeland, and those with a vested interest in maintaining the failing status quo. Healthcare in Canada Should not be one of those sacred cows. Okay? It's getting to the precipice. And politicians, you should be demanding that that politicians refuse to stick their heads in the sand. You know, I thought the big buzzword in progressive government was innovation. And how many times do you hear it? We have an innovation agenda. We must innovate. We must find new ways of doing things, new ways of delivering programs, deliverology, innovation. Think outside the box, get out of our silos, all of this silly stuff, all of this silly talk. What, except when it comes to the single most expensive service for government? I mean, are the Liberals really saying, no, you can't talk about that. That's blasphemous. Don't even go there. It's blasphemy to talk about health care. We have a health care system lacking family doctors, doctors increasingly burned out, people waiting in ERs for hours, sometimes on the floor, people waiting weeks, months, sometimes years for treatment and procedures, nurses quitting again at an alarming rate, being lured to other jurisdictions like the United States to work in the awful American healthcare system. I actually find it brave that a politician isn't shy about talking about healthcare. Susan, Brockville, you're on City News. Go ahead, Susan.
Good morning.
Hi.
I just want to run something by you with the healthcare system. I'm not sure if I'm just the only one that has experienced this. With making an appointment for your doctor, you phone in and you get the call saying, okay, you talk to the receptionist, and she does the triage before you can even speak to the doctor, for one. And then she said, well, you have to have not an in-person call, just over the phone, and she'll say whether or not you can be seen by the doctor. Now, to save money, I'm thinking that I've explained to the doctor, well, I can feel a little lump, which is concerning.
Yes.
I don't need to hear her, call her, excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous about this, call her and be told that I have to wait a month to see her, and then I talk to her on the phone. She can't physically feel the lump, so I'll have to wait another month to get another appointment to get an actual in-person visit with the doctor. Now, this is costing, I'm sure, the healthcare system. I don't know if this is something that's going on all over. Like, that's because she's charging for the initial consult as well, like over the phone.
Sure.
And then you've got to do it twice.
Yeah.
And then probably a third time, if you have to have, the second time might be just to feel it, and the third time being, well, we'll send you to whatever to have a test. But this seems to be, why are we not able to see our doctors in person now? Like, we can go to a restaurant, we can, keep our distance, and I'm sure
right.
all this.
I don't have the answer to that. I guess my only answer would be, where would you be most likely to meet somebody who would be compromised or in a kind of a vulnerable state? Probably at a doctor's office, right?
Well, that's part of it. It's just that we shouldn't have to wait for a month and then a month to get a physical, for somebody to physically touch you. It's costing the healthcare system money.
I guess to the politics of it, these are the things we should be talking about, right?
Well, yes.
You should be talking about healthcare. Of course you should be talking about health. Look at the taxes we pay in this country. Of course we should be talking about healthcare. So much of our tax goes to healthcare. Just to keep what we have. Dudley, New Edinburgh. Dudley.
Oh. Hello, Rob.
Hi, Dudley. Thank you for calling. I think we should be having this election at all, really. Why don't we start?
I think it's fantastic we're having the election.
Okay, all right.
Trudeau has decided about the only way the Conservatives could win is for him to call an early election. Believe it or not, that's the neutron bomb of Canadian politics.
Okay.
The only thing that scares Trudeau more is that a month or two from now, we're going to be in a whole new wave with a record number of cases, and the NDP and the Conservatives might actually vote him down. And he's terrified of that.
I see. Okay. All right.
And that's just kind of my point of view. But these guys are pretty deep thinkers.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you, should it be off limits to talk about health care? And
of course not.
Talking about health care reform and...
I've been to other systems. I've seen other systems. There are better systems in Canada. It's there's no reason not to improve something.
All right, Dudley. Thank you for your call, sir. Greatly appreciated. Yep. Marie in Westboro. Marie, you're on City News. Hi, Marie.
Hi, Rob.
Should we be having this election, Marie?
No.
No?
No. I think it's the worst thing he's done. I really do. But the thing is, before I go on to what I want to say, which will be brief, I just want to say I'm so proud of my fellow Nova Scotians, and I had a lot of fun calling all my Liberal friends in Antigonish. It made my year.
I bet. Okay. All right. Okay.
Anyway,
you didn't see that one coming, did you? We didn't see that one coming.
No, I was sitting in my chair and I kept looking blue. I thought, holy moly, we're on a roll here. Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. Talked about health care. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think with Aaron O'Toole, you must remember there's a lot of advisors in the war room as well. And sometimes I think there might be one that'll just tweak it another way, but that's my opinion. But anyway, for people out there that are conservative, that want to see a change in government, do like a lot of us are doing. Yes, I'm working on a campaign, I'm knocking on doors, and I tell them, if that's what they end up, believe it or not, Rob, that's what a lot of what's coming up at the door is like, what is he going to do about health care? And he's not saying much. And I think you're 100% right, and people like you that keep saying the same thing. He's got to get off this abortion. If they ask him about abortion again, O'Toole should say, "Look, I've already covered that. I'm going on."
I would never. I would refuse to answer that question anymore.
Exactly.
If a reporter comes up and says, "Well, what about this? What about?" I would say to the reporter, "Weren't you here yesterday?
Exactly.
Aren't you paying attention?"
Exactly.
I dealt with this already. Next question, and that would be all I would do with it. I would not entertain that with what Mr. Scheer did day after day after day, being bombarded by that. No, I would not.
And I'm hoping, I'm working for the Carleton Ottawa Centre, but when they come to the door, I hope that people that go to that door tell her or tell the Conservatives that, healthcare came up here, healthcare, and it is coming up. And I don't know why the Conservatives are not grasping that. It's beyond me.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, they do. And the thing is, with Aaron O'Toole, he says within 100 days, I'll bring the premiers together for a grand new bargain on health care and increase transfers to 6%. That's a good news story. Tell it. Back after the news, Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig-Standard. He'll give us the latest that he has on Afghanistan. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 23rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 25 degrees. It feels like 32, the exact same in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ontario reporting an additional 639 new cases of COVID-19 today. These are from 20,000 tests that were completed. In Ottawa, 27 more cases, 6 more in Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 1 each in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and Renfrew County. The province says it has recorded no new deaths in the past day from the virus. Federal election promises being overshadowed today by controversy over a tweet from the Liberals. It comes as leaders try to put the focus on health care and climate change in this election campaign. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with more.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau on the defensive today after a tweet from the Liberals has been labeled manipulated media by Twitter. The tweet contained a clip of Conservative leader Erin O'Toole in which he's asked if he's in favor of bringing in more private companies for health care in Canada, and he says yes. However, the clip was edited and left out a part where O'Toole says our universal access to health care remains paramount, Trudeau not backing away from his party's use of the clip.
In the middle of a pandemic, Erin O'Toole came out unequivocally in support of private health care in terms of for-profit health care.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, campaigning in Montreal in Trudeau's home riding of Papineau, calls the tweet troubling.
We've got the Liberal Party putting out misinformation, spreading it online, to the point that Twitter had to flag it.
The Conservative leader Erin O'Toole will speak later today. Aside from this story, Liberals are promising $9 billion to eliminate the backlog and wait times in our healthcare system, as well as hiring 7,500 new family doctors and nurses, while the NDP is vowing to eliminate subsidies to big oil companies and direct the funds to clean tech and energy. Meanwhile, the latest polling shows the Liberals and Conservatives are neck and neck. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 11:03, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Hot, humid conditions again today. Slight chance of showers, isolated storms. A high 30 will feel like 38. Scattered thunderstorms possible tonight, the low 20. And tomorrow, slight chance of showers. Otherwise, mainly sunny. 32, feeling like 39. For today, the high 30.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 25 degrees. It does feel like 32. 2 people died in an early morning collision that happened on the 417 near Panmure Road. OPP say a pickup truck that was carrying a trailer was stopped in a live lane. 2 people were outside that vehicle and between the truck and the trailer when they were struck by a transport truck. The eastbound lanes of the 417 had to be closed for several hours. The OPP have not said how long that closure will be in effect. Police say family members of the 2 killed have not all been notified, so the identities are not being released right now. City News Time 11:04. A number of groups joining several councillors asking for an emergency transit commission meeting in Ottawa. Following 2 issues involving the axle on the LRT and a double-decker steering off Carling into a ditch, Horizon Ottawa, the Transit Riders, and Free Transit Ottawa have asked for this emergency meeting. Now, Mayor Jim Watson and the Transit Chair Alan Hubley both say they're satisfied with responses they've received to the city. Kirsten Pullis from Free Transit Ottawa says the transit riders are afraid a train could malfunction. Now, while the next Transit Commission meeting is scheduled for September 15th, Councillor Catherine McKenney says if there is no meeting called before that date, you can bring your transit concerns to a question and answer at City Hall's Marion Dewar Plaza Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock. And Hawkesbury OPP investigating a case of vandalism that happened at a cemetery in Treadwell. Sometime between Thursday night and Friday morning, damage was done to headstones. The OPP says it would appreciate any help from the public in solving this case. You can call police directly or anonymously through Crime Stoppers. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Geoffrey Johnston writes about international affairs as a columnist with the Kingston Whig-Standard, with me every Monday morning. And good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, nice to hear from you. What do you think of the latest news, the latest developments out of Afghanistan?
Yes, I watched President Joe Biden's press conference yesterday afternoon. He had a press conference late in the afternoon. I thought the president seemed to have a better handle on the situation. It was very clear all last week that the U.S. government was scrambling. They were obviously caught flat-footed and off guard. They obviously didn't understand the level of chaos that would ensue. What is happening in Afghanistan right now, particularly what's happening at the airport in Kabul, is a humanitarian disaster. So you have throngs of people desperate to get out of the country, and they're up against the barrier, that the perimeter wall around the airport, and people are being crushed to death. It's very hot. People are being overcome. We've seen scenes of American troops lifting babies over the wall. We've also seen a report from Sky News, an excellent one, about the compassionate treatment of the people outside by the British soldiers. We also know that the Americans at some point during the week actually left the airport and went into Kabul with a helicopter and evacuated 169 Americans. And this is where it's really going to get tricky, Rob, because we do know that the Taliban has set up checkpoints throughout Kabul. They are beating Afghans who are trying to get to the airport. These would be people who served the United States and may have papers to prove that they work for the United States, and this puts them in great danger. There are also Americans in safe houses, and the President of the United States has guaranteed that any American who wants to leave will be able to leave. So President Biden was asked yesterday if they would expand the perimeter, and he basically said they have expanded the perimeter. And he was also asked, would the American forces go into Kabul to get people out, and he wouldn't say. Incidentally, the Canadian Defense Minister said yesterday that Canadian Special Forces are prepared to do what is necessary. He wouldn't give any operational details, so I would assume as well that Canada is possibly planning to go in and get people out of the residential areas. So it is a very fluid situation, and it could, when you have troops flying into hostile territory, it is possible that those helicopters or the armored vehicles could come under attack. So it is a very dangerous situation.
Okay. It's been described as a major intelligence failure, and I don't know how you could see it as anything but. Let's face it, the West has been there for 20 years. NATO was, there, well, in Canada's case, more than a decade, right? In Canada's case, more than a decade. With the Americans, almost 20 years. You would think they would know the terrain by now. It would have intelligence assets there. Would know what's happening on the ground. And one of the latest reports that I have seen is, maybe 60 to 90 days. They thought the Taliban may be able to make some significant advancements within 60 to 90 days. They took over the whole country in a week. Is that an intelligence failure? What do you think?
To be honest, I think this is a lack of imagination at the top levels of government. Okay. Look, when the Taliban sheltered al-Qaeda, and the United States and Canada and its partners intervened in Afghanistan, the Americans put together a coalition of warlords and whatnot, and the Taliban actually faded away in just a matter of days, really. It didn't take long for them to just collapse. And so there is a history of this kind of thing going on. And basically, the Americans should have known that when the Taliban made their move, the Afghan National Army was just probably going to fade away because, I don't want this to go be interpreted the wrong way, but the Afghans tend to side with the most powerful force and who's going to win. And when it was clear that the United States was basically going to abandon Afghanistan, it's very clear that they weren't going to fight any longer because the battle was decided, in advance. With all that said, there are reports of U.S. diplomatic cables, where the diplomats, the U.S. diplomats who were on the ground in Afghanistan, were complaining that the United States government had not planned the contingencies of a rapid collapse, and that they weren't doing nearly enough in advance to get people out. So obviously the diplomats on the ground understood the situation and how quickly it could turn. And to be honest, Canada's caught in the same bind, because we should have been getting our people out long before this, and we should have been reaching out to those Afghans who served us so well over these past years. And so to be honest, we should have been doing this over the past several years, not last few weeks.
Not the last several weeks.
Yeah. So,
okay.
The bottom line is, yes, I think there was an intelligence failure, but in the end, I think it was a lack of imagination by the people who are making the decisions, because they should have figured this out.
Okay. What do you know about ISIS and its presence in Afghanistan?
Yeah, so there's an offshoot called ISIS-K, and President Biden talked about this yesterday. And this is, there are, I guess, credible concerns, threats, that they want to launch an attack at the airport. And, because there's so many people close together, they could kill a lot of people. Now, the Taliban and ISIS don't play well together. In fact, the Taliban tries to kill anybody who's associated with ISIS, because the Taliban wants to have a monopoly on their ideology, and ISIS is even too radical for the Taliban. So they're not going to have a free. They're not going to be able to operate in the open the way Al-Qaeda can. Al-Qaeda and Taliban are very close, and Al-Qaeda is the group that carried out 9/11. So there's still a real significant terrorist threat there. Just ISIS. Will always be a threat, but they will not have state support in Afghanistan under the Taliban.
Okay. Trump is trying to do some kind of victory lap, or offer up some kind of "I told you so." I don't think he gets to do that. What do you think?
No, he doesn't get to do that. Look,
kind of started this whole thing.
He set the whole thing in motion.
Yeah.
He negotiated that deal with the Taliban, and they did not include the Afghan government in that supposed peace deal that would withdraw American troops over 14 months. Now, we should all know, too, that Trump wanted to withdraw all troops precipitously by December of 2020, and his generals had to talk him out of it. His former national security advisor even came out last week and had scathing words for the deal that Trump negotiated. So, no, Donald Trump doesn't get to take a victory lap. I think it's actually he should just keep his mouth shut at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Geoffrey Johnston. Always good, sir. Thank you once again. From the Kingston Whig-Standard, where he writes about international affairs, that's Geoffrey Johnston. Now, Aaron O'Toole right now is doing his live media event at the Westin. He's back at the Westin. He's for example, he is facing criticism that he's at the Westin and he's not out doing meet and greets. He says, "I'm taking the safe approach." But the Prime Minister was in Halifax. Mr. Singh was in Montreal today, and O'Toole is back at the Westin. The first question came from the Globe and Mail, and it was about the Twitter attack and the tweet from Chrystia Freeland that was labeled media manipulation. Let's listen to the question and Mr. O'Toole's answer here.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. Marika Walsh with the Globe and Mail. The video that the Liberals put forward of you talking about the healthcare system had you saying public-private synergies. You gave an example of what some are calling a two-tier system in Saskatchewan. I'm wondering what else you think should be privatized in healthcare in Canada.
Let me be perfectly clear. I 100% support our public
and universal healthcare system. In fact, it's been the backbone we've relied on through the pandemic and the frontline workers in it. That's why in our plan, in Canada's recovery plan, we're giving an additional $60 billion to secure that public healthcare system. What is very disappointing is in an election that was called by Mr. Trudeau in the midst of a fourth wave, amidst fires in BC, amidst the chaos in Afghanistan, he's dividing and misleading Canadians on a daily basis. And with their social media yesterday, they're importing American-style misleading politics. I think Canadians deserve better than that.
Okay, so then he was asked to respond in French, and then there was a follow-up question. Let's listen to that.
You have said many times that you, unlike the Liberals, will tell voters the truth in this election. So specifically on your promise, where you said in this clip, we can't just have one old model that is increasingly inefficient, and you called the Saskatchewan model of diagnostics that people pay for a brilliant move. So specifically on healthcare, what else do you support privatizing?
I'm telling Canadians exactly what we're going to do, and that's why on day 2 of this campaign, we launched Canada's Recovery Plan, which has a detailed plan to expand healthcare by $60 billion by giving the provinces stable, predictable funding without conditions that will respect provincial decisions about their healthcare program. In addition to that, yesterday I announced a very ambitious program with respect to national treatment to fight the opioid crisis and $1 billion specific for First Nation communities fighting addiction and mental health challenges. We're also making mental health a pillar. So the well-being of Canadians, the health care of Canadians is at the core of Canada's recovery plan, and I invite people to see exactly what I will do because I've given it to them on day 2 of this campaign.
All right. Okay. Yeah, it's smart that he points that out because I gave you my platform on day 2 of the campaign. In other words, Mr. Trudeau is running an election campaign, hasn't even released a platform yet. Okay. 11:18. Rob Snow Show. David Sali standing by from the Ottawa Business Journal. Next on City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major, major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big, big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. That's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
David Sali is back from the Ottawa Business Journal talking about local business news and some real estate redevelopment. David, good morning. Good to hear from you.
Good morning, Rob. Good
Tell us about the headquarters for the Canadian Nurses Association. What's the plan there?
Yeah, well, Rob, a lot of people are probably familiar with this building, even though you may not know necessarily what it is, but it's a fairly distinctive building. The Canadian Nurses Association headquarters at 50 the Driveway, so that's right near the corner of Lewis Street and the Queen Elizabeth Driveway. Was built almost 60 years ago now, probably 55 years ago, designed by a very well-known Ottawa architect at the time, James Strutt. So it's got kind of this distinctive lantern sort of shaped top to it, and it's it's the headquarters of a large professional association, obviously, the CNA, and at one time it had up to 120 people working there, but of course that's no longer the case since the pandemic. So the CNA, the Canadian Nurses Association, has filed an application with the city to actually redevelop that property. And this is, Rob, as you know, prime property down there in the Golden Triangle area.
Oh, yes.
Near the canal. Every developer would love to get a piece of this prime property like this. So the CNA says it's going to tear down most of its existing headquarters. It will retain some of it because it feels it has some heritage value for its architecturally significant design. So that lantern-shaped top, that will be preserved, and some other key features, but it will be replaced by a 9-story building with 66 residential units. There's going to be 2 3-bedroom suites that they're touting it as an urban living opportunity for families.
Okay.
Along with smaller 1-bedroom units that will provide more affordable living options, for singles, couples, and young families. So it sounds like there's going to be, a fairly significant affordable housing component to this structure. Now, you know how these things are, Rob. You've seen them filed with the city. These planning rationales. They're not always heavy on specifics. They're usually prepared by engineers. In this case, J.L. Richards and Associates. So it's sort of a rough outline, in a sense, of what the project's going to be. So there's not a lot of details. I'm assuming they're rentals, just based on the affordable housing discussion in the document. But the CNA did not. I tried to get comment from them. They didn't respond. So we're also not sure from the document whether there is another developer who's working with the CNA on this, because it would be kind of unusual for a professional association of nurses to suddenly get into the rental housing development space. So there's got to be some sort of a developer partnership component here, I would think.
Plus, I'm just reading through the story. It's zoned for maximum height 4 stories, and they wanted to be 9 stories. I mean, 9 stories, not big, but not in keeping with the official plan. So
right. Yeah. So there will have to be an amendment, and that's not unusual either, right? We're seeing all kinds of developments downtown where there have been have been zoning amendments that have doubled the maximum allowable height and more. So I don't think that's going to be a big hurdle, but I'm just interested to find out who they're working with on this project, because again, this is such a prominent and valuable parcel of land in the downtown core. So it'll be interesting. Yeah.
Just a couple of minutes left. Hexo is a big cannabis company in the Ottawa area. And I'm just looking up its stock here. In February, this was a $13 stock just in February.
Yeah.
It's a $3 stock this morning, $3.11 on
$3.11 as of just a few minutes ago, Rob. That's right.
What's going on there?
Well, and that's down quite significantly in just a couple of days. Last week, it was the stock was well above $3, and it fell 28% on Friday alone, down to below $3 on the TSX. And what's happening is, as we've talked a bit about, I mean, Hexo is on a real expansion binge right now. They've acquired Redecan, a Toronto company, and a deal worth almost $1 billion. That was back in May that closed.
Okay.
So it's put them into the number one market position, but it's costing a lot of money. It's $400 million in cash, $525 million in shares. So to help pay for it, they've been issuing new shares on a pretty regular basis.
Right. So they're diluting. It's diluting the float.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just issued again warrants for $140 million worth of new shares on Friday. I mean, so investors are kind of starting to wonder. I mean, what is my stock each unit really worth if you keep issuing tens of millions more of these every few weeks or every month to help finance your expansion drive. So that's kind of pushing the price down right now. Hexo, as you say, was up above $13 earlier this year. So, but the cannabis industry, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, as we know. It's still kind of finding its footing as a legal industry. And stuff like this is bound to happen as everything kind of shakes out. So it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on Hexo's stock.
I would say so. I'm looking at the long-term chart. I mean, April 2019 is a $42 stock.
Yeah.
I mean, it's $3 today.
Yep.
Ouch.
Exactly.
Ouch. Okay. Dave, thank you. Always good. Yep.
Always good, Rob.
Yep.
Thanks.
David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal. Back right after the news, we're talking about the fourth wave with an epidemiologist. This is City News.
This hour of the Rob Snow Show is brought to you by Cardinal Planning. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Monday, the 23rd of August. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, we're under a heat warning. Partly cloudy, 27, feeling like 34. Here's what's making news this hour. This just in to City News from TD Place. No vaccine, no seat. Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group announcing TD Place will require guests 12 years and older, employees and event staff to confirm a full COVID-19 vaccination or a negative test result in order to gain access to ticketed events. This would include sporting matches like 67s, Red Blacks, and Atletico games. A similar rule in Toronto is anyone who wants to go to a Blue Jays home game at Rogers Centre will have to provide proof of vaccination or a negative test result. The new rule is for fans aged 12 and over, as well as all Rogers Centre staff. It'll take effect September 13th. 639 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario today. Ottawa has 27 more cases. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 6. There's one new case in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and one in Renfrew County. No new deaths from the virus reported in the past day. 2 people killed in an overnight collision on the 417 at Panmure Road. Just before 1 this morning, a pickup truck with a trailer attached was stopped in a live lane. A man and a woman were between the truck and trailer when it was hit by a transport. Both people were pronounced dead at the scene. The driver of the transport was not hurt. Eastbound lanes of the 417 remain closed this hour from Panmure to March Road. City News time 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hey, let's talk about the Delta variant and the fourth wave here on the Rob Snow Show on City News. Our guest right now is Dr. Christopher Labos, cardiologist and epidemiologist and associate professor at McGill University. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
It's very nice to hear from you. I'm just looking at a chart of COVID cases here in the province of Ontario about 2 months ago. So the third week of June, we had about just shy of 300 cases. Today, that number's more than double. It's closer to 700. Is there any doubt now that we're in a fourth wave?
No, I don't think there's any doubt that we're seeing a surge of cases, that we are in fact in a fourth wave. I think what still remains to be seen is how bad this fourth wave actually is. If we can get people vaccinated, if we can get the number of people who are double vaccinated up into very high numbers, it's very possible that this wave will not be as bad as previous waves, that the numbers will stay relatively small, we'll be keeping people out of hospital, and that, yes, people will get sick, but it will be manageable. And I think that's the hope, and that's the expectation almost to some degree, which is that the vaccines are maybe not going to eliminate COVID entirely in the short term, but it's going to make it much more manageable and make it much more likely that the cases stay, that the number of cases stay small and that the cases stay mild.
So then the case numbers, just how relevant are they in your opinion, or would the situation in the hospitals be a more relevant thing to look at right now?
Well, both are important, but they're important for different reasons. So the case counts do matter because they give you a sense of how much circulating COVID you have out there in the community. Now, and there's different ways to measure that. Sometimes people have looked at the positivity rate of testing, but that depends on how much testing you do. So it means something. Clearly, though, if you're a policy person, if you're looking at how COVID is affecting our health system, then the number of people in hospital, the number of people in ICU, that's also critically important. What's happened up until now is that the number of cases and the number of hospitalizations have gone together. There's been maybe a 2-week lag, but as cases start to go up, hospitalizations start to go up. What we're hoping to see, and what seems to be the case right now, is that those two curves might actually disassociate themselves from each other. So we may still see cases go up, but if we don't see a concomitant rise in hospitalizations, then that means that the vaccines are doing what they're supposed to do, which is they're keeping people out of hospital, they're keeping cases mild, and that will be a good sign.
Okay. Thinking back to the earliest days of the pandemic, those most at risk it was often cited as those with compromised immune systems or the frail elderly. How relevant is that right now? How applicable is that right now? Or has say the definition of being at risk of getting COVID changed now because of vaccines?
Well, right now, the biggest risk factor for getting COVID is being unvaccinated. So, everything else matters, and we'll talk about immunocompromised because it's become an interesting discussion now as we talk about third doses. But for the vast majority of the population, the biggest risk factor for getting COVID is being unvaccinated. Those are the people who, by and large, are getting sick. So that's the big one. With regard to the vaccines, because there are a small number of people who have gotten vaccinated and who still get sick, and this happens because the vaccines are not 100% effective. They are 80, 90% effective at preventing infections, but they're not perfect. So a small number of people get sick. And sometimes what's driving these, what people are calling breakthrough cases, is the fact that if you are immunocompromised, if your immune system is suppressed, either because of disease or because of medication, even if you get the vaccine, you may not generate a suitable antibody response. And so that's why you are seeing people talk about giving a third dose to these individuals to try to get their antibody levels up so that they can be protected. So yes, the immunocompromised have to be a little bit careful. People who are elderly, who are frail, they have to be a little bit careful. But if you've been double vaccinated and are in reasonably good shape, you can be pretty confident that you have good protection against the virus. Not perfect, but
not perfect.
Very, very good.
Yeah, not perfect. See, isn't this the alarming? I think this is the alarming thing for a lot of people, even me. I have 2 doses of AstraZeneca. And I feel fine, and I'm confident. I've done everything they wanted me to do. I can't do anything else. I'm wearing my mask. I'm doing all of these things. But even people who are fully vaccinated are still getting COVID.
They are,
and nobody seems to be able to explain how that's even possible.
Well, it's possible because we have to think about what vaccines do. So what a vaccine does, and whether you're talking about the AstraZeneca, the Pfizer, or the Moderna, they are introducing into your body a portion of COVID's genetic codes that your body can make antibodies against, okay? Mm-hmm. So now, after the vaccine is done, you're walking around, you have antibodies, and you have what are called memory B cells, which are a particular cell of your immune system which is ready to go and ready to produce antibodies if you ever come into contact with the COVID virus again. So that's certainly going to help. But there is still a small chance that the COVID virus can get into your body, and the time that it actually takes your immune system to ramp up to make the antibodies to start off the infection, you could be sick for a couple of days. And that's why we say that, yes, you'll still get sick, but you'll have a more mild course because the symptoms won't last as long, they won't be as severe. So you can still test positive for COVID and just have a very, very mild infection. And while that still matters and why you still have to be careful, because number one, we know why get sick when you don't have to. Number two, still be a little bit careful because you could pass it on to others. But the probability of you getting COVID, because you have those memory B cells in your blood, because you're going to be able to generate antibodies, the risk of that happening is quite low. And when you look at the numbers, when you look at the people who are getting infected, they are by and large unvaccinated people, or people who have only received 1 dose. So, we can talk about breakthrough cases. We can talk about the fact that you could still get COVID even though you've been vaccinated, and that's important to understand that. But the risk is so much lower, and so we shouldn't make it seem as if the vaccines don't work, because they really do. They have drastically reduced the case counts because they are extremely effective.
How is it that a vaccinated person can pass on COVID-19 to someone else? How unusual? Is that unusual in epidemiology, or?
Well, no, it's not unusual, but it's just, so first of all, it's rare. It's rare that it's going to happen because you're less likely to get COVID. But remember, what the vaccine does is that it gives you antibodies to fight off the infection. So let's say you come into contact with somebody who's COVID positive. They cough in your face. The virus gets inside your nose, gets to the lining of your lungs, infects your entire body. but you're producing the antibodies to fight it off. But let's say it takes your body 1 or 2 days to make enough antibodies to completely fight off the infection. Well, for those 1 or 2 days, that virus is going to be causing an illness, and you could infect another person if you were to then cough into their face. So we have to remember that what the vaccines are doing, it's not like a force field or like a shield that protects you from getting infected. What it's actually doing is making it so that your body can fight off the infection when it happens, which is why you still have to be careful. And if you're going to interact with other people, take basic precautions to make sure the COVID virus doesn't get into your body in the first place.
All right. When are you researchers at McGill going to invent force fields then? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. Shields up. Shields up.
Yeah. I'll speak to the people in physics.
Let's get on that.
That's a bit outside.
Oh, I know. I'm just teasing. I know. I was just picturing, a force field might be handy sometimes in this day and age, but so here we are. It's the 23rd day of August. On the 23rd day of July, we had 170 cases. Here we are, we have almost 640. How problematic is this term? What's it called? Growth, mathematical growth.
The exponential growth.
Exponential growth. Thank you, David. Thank you. I lost my train of thought there. Force fields got to me. Exponential growth. I mean, it's not the idea that it's going to double every now and then. It could get out of hand, and what's 600 and some cases today could be 6,000 cases a month from now. How real is this possibility?
So it's a possibility, but I don't know that it's a very common one, for the simple reason that the majority of people have been vaccinated. Now, here's the reality of the situation. As you loosen restrictions, and this is what happened over the course of the summer, right? We allowed people to do more and more. We allowed larger and larger gatherings. Mm-hmm. As more and more people get together, the number of cases is going to go up. So that's a given.
Okay.
I think what we have to do is we have to monitor the situation. So, now when you're in the 600 to 700 range, you have to watch it. If you see it creep over 1,000, get closer to 1,500, that's when you have to take measures. So the point of following the numbers is that we can see small increases. That is tolerable as we vaccinate the population. What we have to be careful about, though, is that if we start to see things getting out of hand, if we start to see outbreaks, if we start to see clusters of cases and super spreader events, that's when we're going to have to take measures and maybe shut things down again to prevent us from getting to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 cases as we were seeing during the worst days of the pandemic. So it's all about following the numbers and being adaptive and knowing when to sort of clamp down when things look like they're getting out of control.
Do you think we'll all be getting booster shots at some point?
At some point, possibly. I don't think it's going to be in the near term, because what we've seen with the data, at least 6 months out, the vaccines are still very effective. They do not lose much of their protective capacity, even at 6 months out. So, we can have this conversation again in 2022, and we'll see what the situation looks like. It's also possible that we're going to have vaccines specifically directed against the new variants, like the Delta variant. So that won't technically be a booster. It'll be more like the flu vaccine, where you get a different vaccine every year depending on what the common circulating strain of the virus is. So I think there's still some uncertainty here. We might give boosters to the most vulnerable members of our population, particularly the people who are immunocompromised, who are taking anti-rejection meds because they have organ transplants, because they're on medications that suppress their immune system. So people like that might get a booster. But for now, I think the vast majority of the population probably doesn't need one, and we would do more good in the population perspective if we gave doses to people who have had zero vaccines. And let's not forget that there are many parts of this world where people do not have access to the vaccines. So rather than us getting a third dose, probably better if they get their first and their second.
Understood. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you again. Dr. Christopher Labos, cardiologist, epidemiologist, associate professor at McGill University. The CEO of Mainstreet research polling firm, one of the pollsters, Quito Maggi, joins me next here on City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Let's talk about the polls. The polls with Election 44 with Quito Maggi, the CEO of Mainstreet Research, which has been doing polling for iPolitics. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm here at beautiful Balsam Lake, Ontario.
Sounds lovely.
Like a lot of Canadians, I think probably a little checked out from this election so far.
Checked out? You can't be checked out. You're supposed to be the most tuned-in guy in the country.
I am. I certainly am, but I still, think most Canadians are checked out. Even my level of engagement so far hasn't been what it should be.
Oh, really? Can you measure that? Have you been measuring that? Are people engaged in the election? Is it something they're interested in, following?
I've been looking at a lot of different stats around mobility of the population during these last weeks of summer. Lots of people are on, imagine how many Canadians are on road trips, at a cottage somewhere, a campground, visiting family, without being able to travel internationally yet. Lots of Canadians are traveling within Canada. Mm-hmm. And I think that's sort of, we're seeing this in the polls, the volatility, the fluidity, different regions are bouncing around all over the place. I don't think we're going to sort of know what the baseline number of these polls really until about the first week of September. Right now, there's a lot of fluidity, a lot of I think there's just a lot of confusion, including among pollsters.
Traditionally speaking, in your industry, in public opinion research, when there's let's say a flub or a gaffe or something that, say, turns the voters off. Say, for example, take this Chrystia Freeland tweet and it gets a warning label slapped on it. If people view that as a gaffe or a flub, how long would it normally take for that to be reflected in a public opinion poll?
Oh, something like that could take days, if not a week at least.
Oh, really?
I think right now that's what we call a District 1 story. That means District 1 being like the Ottawa bubble, and along with politicos across Canada of different stripes. Right now, that's who's paying attention to that story. This is still an unfolding. I think it will unfold, and maybe 3 days until we kind of notice in the polls whether or not this is having any kind of impact.
Okay. Has social media accelerated that timeline over the years, Quito, or?
Yeah, it has. I mean, because these types of events or gaffes, whether they be at a debate or just in the natural course of a campaign, themselves don't really move the needle. It's usually the coverage of those that then amplifies the effect, and then we see it 3 or 4 days down the line as the media and social media has accelerated to a not day-to-day but hour-to-hour coverage. Obviously, that timeline has accelerated as well along with it.
Okay. So if the Liberals really did have a bad week last week, it might not be reflected in polling that you do until maybe, the middle of this week, maybe, or maybe the end of this week, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. I think right now things are still very fluid, and I'm interested to see how the second week goes. We've been seeing some strange volatility, and I hope that it starts leveling off as the summer ends. And once we get into week 3, I think I can breathe a little easier.
Okay. Who's winning?
Well, that's a good question. On the ballot, vote share, Liberals have, it's basically a statistical tie. It has been for the last couple of days, with the exception of on Saturday, we had about a 3-point lead for the Liberals nationally. But, below the surface of that, there's some regional differences. Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic, where Liberals have a structural advantage traditionally, has kind of been disrupted. First showed up in Atlantic, where the Conservatives took the lead. We've seen them make gains in Quebec. That had an interesting effect. It actually gave more seats to the Liberals because of vote splits with the Bloc Québécois. And then now the last couple of days, we're seeing huge movement in Ontario. Still too early to know for sure if it's noise or not. But as of today, the Conservatives have a better than 1 in 3 chance. The Electionometer, which we launched on Twitter.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a really neat little thing you've got there. It's a great.
It's a nice one-stop visual. It tells you here's who's winning, here's what the percentage probability. But the probability now of a Conservative government is over 34%. And that's derived by a bunch of simulations that get run based on the polling data. It's all of that is described on iPolitics. So I guess the point is this is turning into a real race. It might look stagnant at the top line, but those regional movements is really what's
that's the story right now. Yeah, and I can understand that, because I was saying, well, look, even if let's say it's even close on the top line number nationally, and a common poll would have the Liberals at, say, 33, 34 prior to the writ dropping, and the Conservatives maybe 29 or 30. Even if it's within 3 or 4 points, the national number is not really the number worth looking for. It's how much do the Liberals lead in Ontario and Quebec, and to a lesser extent in Atlantic Canada and British Columbia. And you're saying it's not so much that it's a statistical tie nationally, it's what's going on in those regional races. And it sounds to me like what's going on in Ontario is really interesting for you, and what's going on in Atlantic Canada is really interesting for you, right?
Yeah, those two regions right now at least are the most interesting. We're still seeing the same sort of picture in BC pretty consistently, which is a three-way race, meaning that we're going to see a lot of very, very close ridings out in British Columbia. But the movement so far has been in Atlantic and in Ontario. It's a little disturbing to see that night-overnight movement being so fluctuating so wildly night overnight, and it's highly unusual.
Okay. There's what the politicians say are the big issues, and then there's what Canadians tell pollsters are the big issues. Have you polled on issues? And if so, what's like ringing alarm bells? Like this is an issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of top issues. Obviously, jobs in the economy is top 5. Affordable housing, climate change, jobs in the economy, pandemic management, and recovery, and
cost of living.
Those affordability issues, along with affordable housing, cell phone bills, those internet rates, all those little what I call microeconomic irritants are becoming a significant issue, especially with younger voters. Going to be interesting to see what that turnout is. That's, to me, the true battleground in this election, is to see will young voters come out and vote, and who will they vote for. We've had it moving around. Mostly the NDP have been leading the last couple of months, but more and more it's a three-way race, and got to wait to see how those young voters react to the platforms that the parties are putting out there.
Very interesting. Thank you, Quito, Maggie. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, nice to be here, Rob.
From Mainstreet Research, his polling for iPolitics. Subscribe to iPolitics to read that. We're back tomorrow after the 9 o'clock news on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.